One of the most important frontiers in American history is the Oregon Trail. The Oregon Trail is not only a physical frontier, it is a frontier of ideals that shaped the pioneer spirit, American determination, upward mobility, and bravery in the face of dangers unknown. In the early 1800s, areas of America were suffering from overpopulation.
We're thinking about often a largely poor urban working class in cities like, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and lots of other smaller cities which are less famous, where economic opportunities are contracting, not because the economy is in trouble, but because there are so many people crowding into these cities. So the West looks better and better, the harder life looks on the East.
The citizens of America became aware of a gigantic mass of land to the west that was ripe for the taking. They were sure that this would solve all of their problems. Their hopes were fulfilled when U.S. President Thomas Jefferson decided to make a purchase that would massively change the U.S. forever. The Louisiana Purchase created a grand opportunity. It doubled the U.S. in size and opened up land further west to aspiring pioneers. After the Lewis and Clark expedition, the trail was seen as a tough challenge reserved only for the people brave enough to tackle it. However, when new explorers found a workaround for fording the treacherous river route, it proved that the trail to the west could be achieved by anyone with the right supplies. Would-be immigrants were enticed with pamphlets and guides that oftentimes overstated the riches they would find. There were rumors that the land out west was so plentiful. There were pre-cooked pigs running around with forks and knives already in them. It was also described as a land of milk and honey with year-round green grass and no illness. Those seeking a better life for themselves and their families prepared to set out on an adventure.
The Oregon Trail, like the California Trail and the Mormon Trail and the Santa Fe Trail and all the other trails, was very long. The journey from the East Coast to the West Coast is, 2,500 miles, something like that, even from Missouri, which is sometimes considered the starting point of these trails. It's 2,000 miles or so to the Oregon country. A fully laden wagon pulled by oxen move really slowly, but they're really strong, takes about, 5 months to go from the East Coast to the West Coast. So these are huge distances and huge amounts of time. And the government, is not moving people's stuff for them. This is like if you and your parents filled the minivan and then had to push the minivan with your hands from here to Boston. It would take a long time, and it would be the most exhausting thing you'd ever done.
I think, first of all, one of the things we have to consider is who was able to make this trip westward, and it wasn't just anybody. And this is a good lesson in thinking about American history, because we oftentimes just think about anybody that wanted to come to America could come to America, but you have to have the means to do so. And anybody that wanted to make the trip on the Oregon Trail had to be what was considered middle class at the time. So, your average, poor immigrants that were fresh off the boat weren't able to make this journey because they couldn't afford it. You had to be able to afford one of the wagons. You had to be able to get enough clothing for everybody. You had to have enough supplies to last the 4 to 5 month trip. Thinking about getting things like flour or bacon, thinking about repairing the wagon, which is also a part of the game. Um, and so, this is a major investment for these people. And so there's a lot of risk that they're taking.
Pioneers relied on guides written by travelers when deciding what to pack. These guidebooks stated important details such as what times grass would be good for the animals to eat, where to trade, and what to avoid. The Oregon Trail had no specific route. There were multiple ways to make it to the west. There were plenty of hurdles along the way. One of the major hurdles were the rivers that blocked the pathway of many wagons. Sometimes the wagons were able to make their way through. Other times it wasn't as easy. Sometimes people would caulk their wagons, which made it easy for the wagon to float across the river without getting wet inside. People didn't make the journey alone. Wagon parties would group together to make the journey. People in the party depended on each other to help everyone through. Parties would set up ground rules to make sure that things didn't get out of control. Of course, it wasn't easy. Besides rivers, there were many other hazards that could occur that even groups could not overcome. Many of these hazards involved diseases and casualties. In fact, at least 1 in 10 would not finish the trip alive. The most occurrent of them was cholera, which was a disease caused by contaminated water. There were also other diseases, such as typhoid, said to have been caused from ticks. Many diseases came from mosquitoes. There was also scurvy, which was caused from the lack of vitamin C. Accidents mainly involved wagon casualties, such as when people got trampled by the wagons. There were also plenty of shootings, though they were often accidents. People died from drowning in rivers or from injuries when near wild animals. Occasionally, tragedy struck in more memorable ways. In one instance, a woman named Elizabeth Markham went crazy while her family attempted to ford Snake River. She claimed she wouldn't be going any further, so the rest of her family had to leave her behind. One of her sons went back to persuade her to return, but he was nearly beaten to death by her. She then set their wagon on fire. Despite these setbacks, the family did eventually make it to Oregon. Death also came in unusual ways. The Donner Wagon Party set out too late in the year, and many ended up getting lost and resorting to cannibalism before freezing to death. Some members of another family who traveled west, the Whitmans, were slaughtered in their home by Native Americans they had befriended. Even so, diseases and accidents were more likely to kill and injure people along the trail than madness, cannibalism, or attacks by Native Americans. And while 1 in 10 died along the way, 9 in 10 did make it alive. So was it worth it? What did the immigrants achieve?
For many poor white Americans who made the journey, and they would have said that economically it was a transformationally positive experience.
The trail and that movement west represents this idea that we have in America, that like the individual is the key to the success of the country, that you make it by going out and facing whatever dangers could lurk around the next corner, but you have to have that frontier mentality, that rugged individual mentality as a way to make it.
By settling down, by building a fence, by planting seeds, by building a house, they're planting a flag.
I think that the Oregon Trail has kind of been taught to us over time as a way to get us to kind of buy into that mentality, and we think about the people that made that movement during that time period and the bravery that took, the dangers that they had to face, and so that maybe we as current day Americans internalize that, and as we go out and think about ourselves in the world today and our place in this country, that we also think about them and try to be those rugged individuals, maybe in a more modern era, but similar to the way that those folks were rugged individuals at the time,